Okay, good morning, everybody. Thank you again for coming to session 6 of the project management training series. You've reached the end, and we're happy that you're all here today. Session 6, we talk about project closeout and process improvement, and is led by Mark Kukuvka. Jackie D'Agostino is also part of the conversation today. And I know that Sue sent an email out to all of you regarding lessons learned. So thank you so much for those of you who submitted them. And that will also be something that we're talking about today. So I'm going to.
Actually, Kat, I'm
sorry.
in the session, but that's fine. No problem.
Like it's Friday and it's only Wednesday.
Okay, thank God, because I just had a mild panic attack. I was like, oh my God, wait, what? Okay, thank God.
All right, so with that, I'm passing it off to Sue and Mark.
All right. Well, welcome everybody. And yes, you've made it through 5 sessions. We're on the last home stretch. And so today we're going to talk about how you close out a project. And I was curious how many people actually have ever closed out a project. Does that sound like a familiar task?
Do you have a poll question for that, or you're just asking?
I don't. I'm just kind of, it's a random question, but I know it's a part of projects that, you know, we kind of rarely do because we're already on to the next project or, you know, thinking about the next deadline. So today's session is really encouraging PMs to think about that. Try to set aside some time in the schedule with your project team to do some of the tasks that we're going to talk about today. And for all of our billers that are on the call, hopefully you can give some thumbs up with some of the things that we'll talk about regarding final financial auditing. So with that, we can move to the next slide, Heather. So the project phases that we've talked about during the sessions so far are the initiation and planning, and even before that with talking about marketing and proposals, and then executing the project, which Kat talked a lot about in session 4. Monitoring the project, so looking, you know, for those change orders or those ad services. How do we work with the client on changes? And then now project closeout. So, you know, maybe your project was just a report. So you submitted your report. Now what do you do? Or it went to construction, and construction is substantially complete. Or there was some other type of phased work that now you've produced all your deliverables, you've delivered all of them, and now you're done, right? So we can go to the next slide. So when we talk about different activities for project closure, what do they ensure? So, again, you've had deliverables, submissions, you've had correspondence, whether it's email or written correspondence. You hopefully, if it was a longer term project, you have some meeting minutes, your schedules, contracts, all of the things that we talked about that you would have produced way back in the beginning. We want to make sure that we do final payment, right? So we are collecting everything that we've invoiced. Our subs have submitted all of their invoices. We've received payment for all of those. We've paid our subs. And so that we know there's, nothing that's going to come back to us later on. And then probably the most important thing is just releasing all the team members, releasing all the resources so that you don't have random project charges showing up on timesheets or on, draft invoices, and you're like, "Oh, I don't know what they're doing. I thought the project was done. Why are they still charging time to my project?" So those are the activities that we want to make sure are done so that we can actually have a project closed out. And so when we talk about the lessons learned, as we go through these activities, we can think about, like, what did we learn in that project? What could we do differently? And whether you or your supervisor or your manager or the client thinks that the project was a success or not, we can always learn from every project. So even after the project finishes, when we talk about finishing here, I mean, like, we've submitted all of our deliverables. Documenting the project is helpful for future projects to make sure that we approach those in a successful way. So Heather, we can go to the next slide. So what are the steps that we consider should be completed here at LaBella for project closure? We talk about a final project summary, and I'll show you a couple of examples. And I think in Heather's email to you, she suggested to look at kind of our blank project closure report template. Mark's report that he produced for one of his projects that he'll run through real quick with us. And I'll show you, some other ways that we can document. I mentioned the financial auditing. We call it auditing. It's really just making sure that all the payments have been submitted and received. Archiving of project files, as we add in things like Teams, channels, and SharePoint sites, in addition to email, or if you use Newforma, there are many different sources now of where we're storing project files and project correspondence. So we want to make sure that we're capturing all of those into kind of a final project package. And then communicating the lessons learned. So, I think this is a step where, and we'll talk more about this, but getting the team together, getting their perspective on what worked well, what didn't, what could we do differently the next time. You can bring the client in, but this is where we really do a lot of learning, right? Retrospect, reflect. If we don't take the time to do that, we're just kind of going through the motions, doing the same thing over and over. Maybe not improving, which obviously we want to do continuous improvement. So we'll go to the next one. So a lot of our projects are just small routine projects. And when we talk about closeout, I'm sure the budget's already been spent. How do we take time now to make sure that that we get these steps completed? Well, hopefully you can do some of these things along the way. If you're diligent about storing your correspondence and your email into the project folder or something like that, then it's not so daunting at the end. Or you're making sure that your submissions are in the submittal folder and not kind of spread around in different places in your project folder. So with small routine projects, there's really only a few steps that we typically want to make sure are complete. And again, this is that final project summary. And I'll go into Deltek and show you an example, but on the screen kind of shows what that might look like. And it could just be a couple of paragraphs that go into the info center in your project in Deltek. That then, when we do marketing sheets, you'll have that information available, and you don't have to remember, like, what year was that completed, or how much was that fee, or what was that construction cost. It'll be right there. Obviously the final payment, that's going to be typical for every single project. Organize your correspondence, and then make sure to coordinate with IT when you're looking to, if you do have a Teams channel or Teams site for your project team, or a SharePoint site, and make sure that you tell them, yes, it's okay to archive these things, because otherwise they'll just stay in more expensive storage locations where we could move them to an archive storage, which costs a lot less. We can keep going, Heather. So large projects. So I'm thinking, typically might have a construction phase, or, they're longer term, a lot more subs involved, have a few other steps. So some of those steps could be, obviously in the construction phase, we want to make sure that the contractors don't have any liens against any of their subcontractors or suppliers. Not that that necessarily is going to be our role to play. I mean, it may be the owner, construction manager, but if we do have that in our contract, we need to make sure that we pay attention to that. Notice of completion from involved agencies, like if we got a permit from the DEC or DEP or somewhere else, that or Department of Labor, we had prevailing wage rates. They ask that we let them know when our project is complete, so they can archive their records too, and just know that work is done. Record drawings, as-built drawings. If you have a drawing package, making sure that they, whether we're in charge of completing those, or if the contractor, needs to provide red lines to us, and then we take those red lines and do something with them, etc. Are we giving them to our client? Are we just, there's lots that we could talk about with record drawings.
Going back to your contract, know your contract. Is that because there aren't, on the record drawings, there aren't two projects that are the same on what they want. It's just the due diligence to go back to know your contract.
Right. And those who have led projects where their record drawings are required, again, if hopefully you've set aside some budget to work on those at the end of the project, but maybe that budget got eaten up along the way. Again, letting the team know that is your responsibility at the beginning will hopefully allow them to be thinking of that along the way, and then it's not such a daunting task again at the end. The transmittal of any electronic or hard copy documents to the client. So hopefully, again, along the way, you made submissions to them, but there may be something that you didn't think to copy them in on that they will need for them. I know a lot of times with projects, there's grant funding requirements. So, the client can't get the money from whoever the funding agency is until they submit to them certain documents. So we need to make sure that we know what the client is responsible to provide to any of those types of parties. And warranty responsibilities. So again, looking at the contract, if the contractor has a 1-year performance warranty or a 2-year warranty, what are our responsibilities during that time period? We can talk, I think Mark, I don't know if you wanted to bring up, there was a project that Mark and I worked on. It was a crime lab, and we can show you a couple of, I don't know if I have that along the way. later on, but we could talk about that now. Where there was a metal, well, steel trellis that kind of penetrated through a wall. And after the building had opened, there was leaking through the wall. And our team was responsible to work with the contractor to figure out why that leaking was happening. Took a number of hours of our team's time to help try to figure that out. And we were successful in stopping that leak, but during that time, I'm not sure that we had anticipated we would have to spend those many hours working with the client and contractor on that. Mark, I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
It goes back to what our expectations are as project managers on design details and performance and things like that. And it came down to the final structural and shop drawings. That instead of having a nice cantilevered beam coming through the exterior wall, it was a connection point. And so, as you can imagine, if I have nuts and bolts and plates and a connection point, the worst place you could have put the connection point was at the wall. And then Mr. Contractor tried to waterproof that as much as possible. So, it's one of those lessons learned, but it's also one of those warranty issues where, was it really the contractor's fault that it was it's a combination between not a good detail and, not the right solution for the contractor. So.
Yeah. So we could certainly share more stories in a second half of our session today, with lots more lessons learned, but that is a thing that can bite us if we don't pay attention to it. And then obviously, again, the correspondence, organization and saving, and the talking with IT about. So Heather, we can go to the next slide. So that final project summary, we can go to the next slide. Why do we want to take time to do that? Well, here's, the who, what, when, where, why about that. Typically, we want to create project sheets, market sheets for proposals that include information about projects, relevant projects that we've completed prior. So if we don't do this along the way or, at the end of this current project, then you might be asked 5-10 years later, details about that project that I'm going to guess we've all forgotten by that time. And then we're searching around, trying to go through the project folder to find information. And it's not easily retrievable. So we would encourage project managers to think about, right from the beginning of the project, a snapshot of the project. So what did we do? So some kind of project summary. Doesn't have to be long. It just has to provide the relevant details that you think are going to be important for people to know years later. The project team. So if we can keep track of, this person did the civil engineering on this, or they did the environmental phase 1, then we can say, oh, I remember that person worked with me on this project and they did a great job. I want to talk to their supervisor, their manager, and see if they're available for my next job that has the same work included. But sometimes, if we let things go, we're like, who was that person? I can't remember who that was, but they did a great job. How did we do? So when, we've talked about at the beginning, we're going to put together a schedule, a budget. Mark and Jackie talked about change orders. you know, let's just see, how did we do? So again, the next project, you know, we put a fee for this project of $3,000. And knowing what we know now, we never should have submitted that fee. We should have easily charged them $6,000 as an example. So just some pertinent information about, again, what we should do differently next
think-
time.
And the
Mark, do you
project
have anything
team,
to add to that?
I was just gonna say is we're a full service company, and what we got to remember about the project team also is sub-consultants, is that so we may do structure all the time. We don't remember who did the structure, maybe for MWBE reasons, or we were busy, or specialty reasons. We had a sub-consultant on there, so it's just a good, as she is saying, a good snapshot of who was on the project and what it's about. And a lot of the information you'll hear, I mean, you can cut and paste information out of the RFP. If there was an RFP, you could cut and paste information out of your proposal or the contract. So, you know, to keep it simple.
Great. Heather, we can go to the next slide. So again, I think we already mentioned a few of these at least, but again, why do it? You know, Mark and I always joke about the 5-year rule. So it always seems that when, you know, marketing is looking to put together project sheets or, you know, update resumes, it's 5 years later. And again, you're trying to think of the details of that project, what was relevant to put on any of these, you know, proposal materials. So while you're in the project, before you close it out or you end that project, try to, you know, document, summarize what that information is. And we use it for, you know, project performance evaluation. Do we want to work for that client again? Did the project go so badly that we're like, I'm never working for that client again? Or it was like, I love doing those projects. We have a great team. We can do these really well. So let's make sure that we note that this is a type of work that we want to keep doing. And as Mark mentioned, the sub-consultants or subcontractors, we can say, again, you know, we needed this specialty firm. You know, we thought they could do the work that was needed, but they really weren't capable like we thought they were. So you'd want to just document that so that you could share that information with other people, so we're not continuously up against that issue. Or these subs were great, and you know, let's use them again. And then, you know, just general QA/QC and professional development. Again, thinking about that. Do we want to keep doing this work? What are the things that we could improve upon with our quality control? How do we train our team members to do these tasks for these particular projects? You know, I know in the work that Mark does, there are some specific materials that need to be specified or certain things that need to be designed. And, you know, as we work through the project, we can say, well, I really think we need to train this group, these electrical engineers, better on what the security requirements are for a jail, as an example.
So the other thing I was gonna say is that I'm amazed on RFPs that come in. The other why for this is they want to know our change order track record. You know, they want to know our repeat business track record. They want to know, you know, how did we go over? Did we go under? Things like that. And so I think, you know, you'll see here through Deltech, but it's now an opportunity to capture some of that information that we have for, you know, future projects and to build our reputation. the other example that I was gonna give under a 5-year retrieval, because it just seems like it's that long and you know, we're a changing group, is we just went after and got the new water authority project in Buffalo. And we had done for the city of Rochester a water authority project, but that was so long ago, I think there's only 2 people here left. So I had to really search the archive to say, okay, who worked on it, you know, to do that. And this is, again, just from a reference standpoint.
Right. So, Heather, I think I'll take over sharing, if that's okay. So hopefully everybody sees this now.
Yep.
Yep. Okay.
Yep.
So in Deltec, and if I go back, so there is on the left-hand side, there's what's called Info Center. And if you're to click on Info Center, you see a bunch of different categories. And one of those categories is projects. So if you were to click on projects, and hopefully this, there we go. Everything that was in the PIF that you created that our billers had input, this happens to be the Madison County Courthouse project, is listed in here. And there are a bunch of different tabs that, you know, are either filled in or are not filled in. But here gives a lot of information, like as you're pulling together a summary, you can see here's the team that actually charged time to that project. And it gives their title, so you can have some idea of what discipline they, you know, are with and what type of work they might have done on the project. And then there's information, some information about clients and the context of the client. And then there's some other tabs that we typically aren't filling in, but there is a place called links, where if you produce a report, a project closure report using our template, where you can link that report from our network to Deltec, so that then you can get to that report. But before I get to that one, I just wanted to show you another option for a different project. So this project is one that I led. So it's a structural project, and instead of producing a full report, I just created a description in this background tab under descriptions, and created and I'll bring it over here, a couple paragraph summary, included the construction cost and the construction completion date. So, you know, while this isn't as descriptive as what I'll show you for that Mark produced for the full closure report, at the very minimum, if we can have some kind of information like this included in Deltec, then we can always search through Deltec, you know, using keywords, etc., for information like that. So I go back. And you can type in, if you know the project number, you can type it in the search. If you know, just, you know, the client name or a term of, you know, what is in the project title, this search is pretty robust, and you should be able to find that pretty easily. So if I go back to the links here, and then this shows me where that file is, and then since I already had it open, it opened really fast. But then it brings you to the location of that file. So this, if you looked at our template for the project closure report, just show you the table of contents. So you can see these are the things that we just talked about that we would want to document if we were to create a report. And, you know, Mark's project, and we can look through here for the actual construction cost and the fee, but it was a rather large project. And you can see this report is only 10 pages for a really large project. So they don't have to be long. They don't have to, you know, take a ton of time. Again, if you can be cutting and pasting information along the way, then it takes you no time in the end, but we have a good summary document to refer back to.
And then you don't have to be completely restrained by the template. A template is a, you know, a good suggestion, but if your project isn't applicable to some of those categories, that's fine. It's more important to you're telling the story. You know, you're the PM, and so you know you're the best judge of the story that needs to be told for the future.
Yeah. So, Mark, I didn't know if you wanted to take just, you know, 5 minutes to kind of run through this.
Yeah. The quick summary, you know, of this is, can everybody see that okay, or does it need to go larger on their screen? Is this project summary? So we literally cut and paste that out of the proposal, so I had to make very few edits to that. I thought it was fairly concise on what we were doing, so I did that. These were the original design fees, so this is all cut and paste. This is what we were hired to do, with allowances and lump sums and whatever. So that provided a nice snapshot, you know, of where we were. So the next page. It's your team members. So I did have to do some searching back with timesheets and Deltec and things like that, just to remember who's there, because many of these projects, this one was probably, you know, 4 years in length. I had some people who came and went, and so you wanted to, you know, kind of document that, you know, who I started off as my electrical engineer. I didn't end with my electrical engineer, so it's good to go through that. And then I think the next page, some of it had to do with the construction managers also. Is that okay? Who did we work with, you know, on this, and what was it, good or bad? And then at the very end was commissioning, you know, for doing. One of the things the report likes to compare, and again, this is for future projects, is many times the RFP will say, did you stay on schedule? And so we had in our proposal and in initial discussions with the owner, there was the ideal schedule. So the final closeout there was going to happen in October of 2018, was the initial guess for, you know, for the project. So we put that in there, gives us something to compare to. So the next page. So some of this is, I think, was repeated here a little bit on what we thought, but towards the bottom of the sheets was, how did you do for change orders? You know, how did you do against the estimate? How good of estimators is the LaBella team? And so we put it on the bottom of here of what our estimates were. We thought the total project cost, hard cost, soft cost, would be somewhere around $19.4 million, you know, and that the construction cost would be around $15 million. So then as we went along with other estimates, but the actual construction costs on bid day was, you know, was 12.5. So we were 15 million estimate and we were 12.5, but with potential change orders, it was 14.8. And then with total construction with soft costs, we were 18.6. So we were just under our total budget that we had given them 3 years earlier. So that's this is before COVID, right? So we were a little able to predict the marketplace a little better. So that's pretty darn good from a proposal standpoint. So the next page, the schedule. So what did lengthen in the schedule is I had the original schedule is that we were guessing that we would be done with construction around October of 18. we really didn't get done until May of 19. We got a construction manager when we did the original schedule. We didn't have a construction manager, and we really, this is a renovation cost of a 1909 courthouse, and it just unforeseen issues, and everybody kind of agreed it was too aggressive. So we put a softer, I think we put it till March in the contract documents, into March of 19, and then it actually spilled over to May of 19. So the other thing we did on this project, which we don't always do, with the construction manager and LaBella, the owner was very particular on, and I have some owners like this who like to categorize change orders. Is it an unforeseen change order? Is it an error and omissions change order? Is it an owner improvement change order? Or caused by, something else. And so we came down, we were able to, from that spreadsheet from a couple years of construction there, kind of, break them out. So we would agree on a change order basis, on a monthly basis, whatever it was, on what bucket it should be in. And then I was able to disseminate that at the end. So, if I took in, error and omissions was really 1%, error and omissions plus any owner potential requirements, unforeseen. I mean, some of these errors are combinations, right? Some of them are unforeseen, but could LaBella have prevented it or something? And so all in all, on a construction project that total change orders, overall change orders, was 3%. On a renovation on a historic building like this, they easily could have been 8 to 10%, and we were at 3% with all those categories in there. So that ends up being, they were very happy, very successful project. So, and who the contractors were, just from a memory standpoint, we just put it in. Again, people to be aware of, not to be aware of, things like that. Recommendations. So next page. So the next page was really the lessons learned, is to try to pass along to future project managers. You could skim through this. They could look through similar projects. So if you're starting up a project type, highway garage or something else like that, or a civil project, whatever, you could look up civil projects. I think that's the intention with Deltech a little bit. If you knew similar projects, that you could go through and look that up. So I tried to, this was done within the year of finishing the project, to kind of fresh in your mind. And so I was able to capture some lessons learned here that are applicable, and I'll talk about that more in a minute. They're more applicable to future PMs and architects and engineers, to try to not make the same mistake again. So.
Thank you, Mark.
Okay.
So I'm going to stop sharing, Heather, if you want to go back to sharing.
All right, give me 1 sec to share my screen. Everyone can see the Go Live Deltech screen, thumbs up.
Yeah, but it's the other, it's not the full.
It's not in, it's not in
slide.
presentation mode.
What? Is that in presentation mode?
No.
Well, it's the opposite screen.
Oh, okay. One more time.
It's like in edit mode or something.
Oh, okay. So let's try this again. So it should be screen 2. Okay, is it the same one, or is it the correct?
Nope.
Okay, all right, let's try this again.
Thank you. All right. So couple little bit more information about some of these other steps that we talked about. So financial auditing, we can go to the next slide.
Okay.
I think, you know, I already mentioned a bunch of these, but we want to make sure, you know, if Deltec can be our source of our financial information for the project, we want to make sure that any additional fees or change orders have been put into Deltec so that the final project budget is the actual final budget. I know sometimes we forget to let accounting know. So where, you know, a project may show over budget, it's actually not, because we didn't put in all of the additional fees. And this isn't just LaBella fees, but subconsultant and subcontractor fees also. So just to, you know, making sure that we remind PMs that we need to let accounting know, so that all of the additional fees have been put into your project in Deltec. Make sure that a final invoice has been issued. So again, we could maybe get some feedback from our billers here, but I think it would be great if all our PMs would note on that final invoice, this is our final invoice. But don't do that if you think you're still going to get invoices from subconsultants and subcontractors later on. And just making sure that all fees that can be charged have been charged. Again, that may take some reaching out to your subs and subcontractors, because I know from experience, you know, you may get an invoice 6 months later from a sub, and you know, you've already told the client, this is the final invoice, and then you get this subconsultant invoice, and then does LaBella, you know, have to pay that, or do you tell the sub, sorry, it's too late? Then it you know, gets into some difficult conversations. So
Yeah, you almost got to tell accounting, if it makes sense to send the invoice and you know you have to hold money back to pay your subs, you got to tell your biller that. You got to tell accounting that, so that they don't get that check and think that it's profit or that they can spend it. So
yeah, and hopefully I'll hear a cheer from all of our billers for this next statement. Collect any outstanding accounts receivable. So please check Deltec. All of your invoices are listed there. You can tell whether or not they've been paid. If they haven't been paid, I would encourage all the project managers to be responsible to reach out to the client and make sure you understand why something hasn't been paid or when it is going to be paid. Because when the project is complete and there's outstanding invoices, sometimes it's really hard to collect them after the fact. So can I get like a yay thumbs up from all my billers? All right.
and I've had to write paragraphs. I knew the owner was holding back money for a particular reason. And, you know, as PMs, I would have to write a justification to LaBella, to accounting, but also LaBella on why it was happening. So it's being proactive with it.
If you have any questions about, I'm not really sure where in Deltec to see that information, please reach out to your biller. I'm sure they'd be more than happy to show you how to check that. And you can preview any of the invoices that have gone out. So possibly you went over budget. Now, you know, hopefully you have a good relationship with your biller, and they're gonna, you know, say, oh, what are we gonna do with this other amount that's sitting here that we haven't invoiced? Are we able to collect that, or are we not? But if we're not, please let them know. It happens. I would rather have a PM make a plan for that write-off than ignore it, because we can if we don't hear about it, we continue to carry that revenue, and that's not real revenue. So we definitely need to make sure, hopefully, before the end of the fiscal year at the latest, hopefully it's at the end of your project, that we know whether or not that is revenue we are going to be able to collect or not. So again, it happens, so don't necessarily feel bad, although obviously it's better if we don't go over budget and we can collect all of our charges, but better to not just ignore it and let that sit there for years and years. We talked about making sure we pay all the subconsultants and contractors, or we at least get their invoices. Before we close out the project, we should just make sure that they have all been paid by LaBella, because as I think we've covered previously, there is a delay, in paying our subs that we pay after LaBella has been paid by the client. So we want to make sure we've been paid by the client so that then we can pay our subs. We don't want our subs coming back and saying, we're never going to work with you again because you never pay us. Make sure that the owner has paid any contractor invoices. So again, if you have a construction phase, or if you're involved in some kind of follow-up field work, again, just making sure that that contractor has been paid, there's no liens, so that, something may eventually come back on to LaBella. We just want to be knowledgeable about that. Again, same with, grant funding or other funding sources. It's nice to follow up with your client and make sure that, they've been paid all of that they're due from any of those funding sources. And then, again, with our project summary, kind of think about whether our budget and our spend were appropriate before we go ahead and propose that fee again in the next proposal. Maybe to have a conversation with the client if it's going to be work that you think they'll want to repeat with us. Say, we love doing this project with you, but knowing what it takes now, we really think we need to increase our fee, 5%, 10%. Better to have that conversation up front versus continue losing money every time we do that similar task for that client. And most clients are going to be receptive to that. I would think if you're including them along the way, they understand, we thought this task was, a 40-hour task, but knowing what we know now, it's an 80-hour task. And then just identifying spend overages or underages, right? If we were able to do the work below budget, maybe we won't, charge less for the next proposal, but, we'll know that that's a profitable type of project or type of client. If there's overages, identify where those occurred and see what we can do differently next time to avoid those. We'll go to the next slide. Everybody's favorite topic is archiving. That's a joke, right? Everybody.
It is.
Archiving. Why do we need to archive? Well, for those, I could show you, move my screen around of how many boxes I still have in my office. It's a hoarder's paradise. I really need to make sure to get these things out of my office, get them archived in a way from the office, as an example. So we can go to the next slide. Electronic files. So why do we need to pay attention to archiving electronic files or project folders? We do pay for storage of that data, whether it's in the cloud or if we have an on-premise server. We have to back up all that data. and we have to pay for backup devices and backup systems. Again, just letting you know that with cloud solutions, for active data, they charge one price. For archived data, or data that is not active, they charge much less. So if we can move data over to archive, that helps us free up some revenue to do other things. It increases the performance of our network systems. For those who've been with us a while, we've got to move this client to a different location because that server has been maxed out. It can't handle any more data. So if we can remove data from that, then we can prevent having to move it around in our active systems. And then obviously the more data that sits around that ages out, hopefully everybody's done their cybersecurity training. People still look for any kind of data, whether it's 10 years old, 5 years old, to see what information they can garner out of it. So we can prevent that from, exposing information that we don't want exposed. So our recommended time frame is a year after the date of the final invoice. Again, just to make sure that certain things don't pop up along the way. I know a year is probably a long time. You've probably forgotten about the project, but IT may, look at those projects that haven't had any activity for a year or more and reach out to the project manager and say, hey, is it okay if we archive this off of our active system?
And you're
So
gonna
before they do that.
yeah, I was just gonna say, and it's the PM's judgment on that too, because our warranty on the building projects is usually a year. It's we could have a year in our contract. So it could either be the final invoice, or you may say, I need to keep this open a year after the 1 year warranty period, because I find there's a lot of back and forth during that 1 year warranty period. So that's right. Just the PM judgment. Great
point, Mark. Yes. If we know there, contractors on board for a 2 year warranty, we don't want to close out, hopefully this doesn't happen, but if there is a potential of a claim, then obviously we're not going to archive that project, because we need to pull information to support that claim. But be thinking about, eventually those files will be archived. If we can just take a few minutes to kind of clean out the junk that we don't need, that's helpful. We're not, we're not forcing people to go in there and clean out everything, but it certainly is appreciated. If you have to submit, well, I'll get to that when we talk about CAD files. But as I mentioned before, now we have Teams channels, team sites, SharePoint sites. Don't forget about them. And we can also archive those sites too. So we'll go to the next slide. Paper files, we still have them. They're much less than they used to be. But if you have paper files, we do have a process with our office administrators to be able to put them in folders and boxes and then take them into a storage location that's off-site at any of our given office locations. So if you have paper files that you're going to need to keep, please work with your office administrator, and they'll help you get those organized. And we do have a database. Each of those boxes is assigned a number, so that if you need to retrieve it later on, like Mark said, now we're doing another water authority project 10 years later, there may be stuff from that previous project that would be helpful. We can retrieve those boxes if needed. or there's old photos in there. I can tell you I have slide decks and old printed photos that sometimes come in handy.
It'll take a while, but so don't be in a hurry if you need to get them out of archive, so.
So, Aaron, are paper files saved for more than 7 years? So paper files, we, as a company, have been saving data electronically and paper forever. We have been talking with the legal department about, are we going to set a timeline? You know, if 7 years is the expiration date of certain types of claims, we need to save things after that. It's up for debate, again, because some people, if it's a repeat client and we, for instance, have record drawings, that I've been asked, like, do you have a set of these record drawings handy to give us? Then, we like to try to say, yes, we have them. So there really isn't a expiration date for our archive materials. So I don't know.
On the legal lunch and learns with our corporate attorney, Bob Attardo. Yeah, I think he's taken I'll say a conservative approach, and he's just saving them, right? I mean, he's just saving them. I was always in that 7 to 10 year standpoint that I got rid of a lot of stuff, maybe except for the core contracts and the original documents or something. But after 7 to 10 years and you haven't heard anything, to do that. But Bob has been saving them more. And then Emily, yeah, I mean, what I've certainly done, if you had an older project that was not electronic, sometimes I have scanned contracts in and things like that and put them in the folder and then threw the contract out. And threw the contract out because we're being much more proactive with our electronic.
Now we do try to encourage, I know I worked with some old timers that said, you've got to save all your markups, all your drawing markups. We don't need to save all the drawing markups.
Yeah. Original, piles and piles of markups. No, those are gone.
Yes. So again, we try to limit it to, what are the final submissions, reports, drawings, etc., the contracts, and any relevant financial documents that prove, that, like, change order documents or ad services documents. And Aaron, do we contact IT for electronic archives? Yes. Yes.
If you need something pulled out, yep, and they're very good about it.
So thank you for the questions. And there we can go to the next slide. CAD files. There is directions regarding archiving for various types of CAD files, Revit, Civil 3D, AutoCAD, etc. Because each one of those has a little bit different method of doing that. For instance, AutoCAD files, you might bind all the XREFs into one file and then bind your entire drawing set into a single file, etc. Some of that depends on what, your contractual obligation is with the owner versus just what we want saved, how we want them saved from LaBella. Do we do a DXF or etc. So I won't go into a lot of detail on that, but if you're interested, now I did not update this snippet, but this is from the old intranet. You can find on the scope, there is a specific design tech site, and all of those standards are referenced on that design tech site on the new scope. And so Heather, I think that is where we're gonna stop for our break. And
Okay, so this next section here is basically on communications and lessons learned, and I certainly appreciate everybody providing feedback. It's been great with every session, especially because we're not doing them live. You know, and live it's good to go around the room and kind of learn from each other. I mean, a lot of it, you know, is that. I think on the opening slide here, I think the real message that I like to put out is lessons learned are something that is actionable. I mean, we kind of learn things on projects, and there could be employee issues or contractor issues and construction management issues or owner issues, but that you might note, but it's got to be actionable, something that you can write down and pass along to the future architect, engineer, or somebody before you do that. So it's something that would, you know, essentially result in less liability for LaBella, more profitability, and a higher quality, you know, on the documents is essentially, you know, how I kind of define, you know, lessons learned for that. I think this is focused on project managers, and I think that, you know, some of the examples here is being sensitive, know your project, you know, what information do I need in the beginning? I mean, I've seen too many times chasing stuff after you're down the road with a project that, oh, I forgot to, we got to do it. We got to do our regulated building material testing. We need to get a survey. When do we got to get the survey out? And because, and I talked about this in a little bit in session 5, but it's kind of knowing the length of time for that. So the latest thing that I hear crying about is the backflow preventer, right? We put a new water service in, and where's the backflow preventer report, you know, and people are getting in a panic for that. Well, the PM, you know, should have that. And if that's a lessons learned, that's a good actionable lesson learned to, you know, to do that. I think not getting access to all areas of the building or the site or testing there, I think that, and that's a joint decision between you, the owner, and how it's going to be paid for and how you're going to do that. But I try to tell the owners on these, you know, we just talked about the Madison County project. I cut holes all over that building, a historic building. And so did we have to get, yes, I had to get an abatement contractor to abate the plaster. Yes, I had to get somebody to cut the hole, and then I got Sue to climb through the hole. So, you know, to do that. I mean, but it's that kind of a thing is, if you got to be clear with yourself, your team, and the owner, if I can't get to it to know if that pipe has a problem or something like that, you're guessing, right? So there, you know, and that you're gonna figure it out then during construction. Is it the owner said, nope, you're not cutting any holes in this, you're not doing any test borings, whatever it is, and then therefore, you know, your documents are guessing how to do that. I think other things that are lessons learned for us is being clear with what we bought in our contract versus what the contractor may want us to do in the field. You know, we may have said, because we get burned so much during construction, the construction side of the project is, okay, we planned on being out on the site twice a month, you know, and the contractor wants us out there once a month. You know, we planned on our forces going out there to do 2 rounds of punch lists, and the contractor wants us to do 10 rounds of punch lists, you know, and to verify the punch list, you know, so, you know, what's in there. Yeah, we didn't plan on the construction being phased, and the construction manager or the contractor gets in there and says, oh, for my efficiency or whatever it is, well, okay, then Mr. Owner, that's got to be a conversation. You got to pay me because I didn't plan on having, you know, being phased construction. I think the other thing that I see happening is we don't know many times during design if how it's going to be, the construction is going to be managed. They may not have put it in our contract. We may think the owner is going to manage the construction. It's going to be a clerk of the works. It's going to be, you know, but they didn't tell us. And so many times I will write on the larger projects when they're indecisive, I will write in there if there's a third party on-site person doing that, I could be owed more fees because what we thought would have been reasonable, the construction manager, the clerk of the works may not think is reasonable, and they're going to be asking us to do more. So that it's something that it just lessons learned and to be aware of. Emily writes, I think it's a good one is getting the town or the city involved in the project before we submit for permit so that we agree on our assessments. I'm a big advocate for, I want to submit for all permits right either before or during the bidding process, because if the code enforcement official or somebody else comes in, oh, well, I want this, I want that, I want you to change this, you have time to incorporate it into an addendum or into the bidding documents. So it's been a good way for me to help manage that, to keep it from being an errors and omission, is let's get that building permit in hand. And even if they won't hand you the permit, they're ready to hand you the permit. They sometimes want to wait till the contractors are all assigned and everything. Well, that's fine. I want you, Mr. Code Enforcement Officer, to review this, and you're going to identify to me any concerns that you have. Utilities, call before you dig. On my projects, and this could be civil projects or whatnot, call before you dig is too late. I mean, the call before you dig guys, they want to know within 3 to 5 days of Mr. Contractor putting a shovel in the ground. Well, I want to know where the utilities are a year before that happens. And so again, as PM, you got to be thinking about that. And should I have in my budget ground penetrating radar, GPR services, just as an example, or some kind of a utility identification service? Should I have that in my contract, or specifically exclude it in the contract? So when Mr. Owner says, your fee's too high, how come you don't have it in your contract? Say, okay, Mr. Owner, then you're going to do it. Then you're going to. I got submitted for the building permit too late. I had a project. You try to mentor people, and I had what I thought was a more seasoned architect, and he didn't apply for the building permit after the contracts were awarded. And so the building permit is a 30-day process. And so Mr. Contractors are sitting around, I'm ready to go, and I had no permit. So needless to say, I was very frustrated that that was not done aligned that way. And then keeping the client informed. As we talked about in session 5, and as part of this is communication with the owner. The owner's expectations are not necessarily our expectations, and it depends on how sophisticated your owner is. Very sophisticated owners are, I would say it's a little easier depending upon the project manager you have, then the owner's project manager, But I have usually very unsophisticated owners. They do one-off projects, and so I have to mentor and work with them, all along throughout the process there. So next slide. This goes along with our safety committee too, and this is the thing where the project manager, you don't have to know everything, but you gotta be sensitive to the activities that are going on with your team members and all the team members on this. When you go out to the roof or you go out to an area, you got to go into a crawl space or something like that. Don't assume that the client or the contractors, whatever, have made the work site safe. I mean, that's something those are good questions, right? Good questions to ask. And so you're prepared. So we have the proper PPE out there ahead of time, or stuff has been cleared for us to go out there and have the right equipment or harnesses or whatever it is on there. Know the hazards ahead of time. Are you going to be on the roof, ladder, or what's being provided? Are we bringing the ladder? Are they bringing the ladder? And what has been tested, what hasn't been, tested for that. And so I think the PM has some responsibility, especially when you're sending out younger staff out here or haven't been out to the field very often, to do some due diligence with that and talk through that with them, and making sure with our safety committee here, now it's so much formalized here at LaBella, that we have that resource too for project managers to tap into and have some conversations, before they do that. And the confined spaces, those of you who have been involved with that at all, I mean, that requires all kind of training, right? I mean, that's not just something you can go out, put a harness on and jump into a confined space area. That does require a training before you start doing that. So the next session here is again, I'm gonna attendees examples here. I thought, there were some good ones in here. John, I'm going to pick on John first here. That he takes wonderful notes. And any project manager that is proactive and takes notes that cover ourselves and our liability, go ahead and talk about that if you could, John.
Well, some time ago, I developed just a simple Excel spreadsheet to track individuals, their information, who they work for, and then when we the project number we're talking about, and as well as the information. Primarily, I use the tool to kind of play catch up. Sometimes projects sit for a length of time, and you may be a little bit forgetful of where you ended, or some of the minutia, some of the details of that project. So, and then sometimes you get a call like last minute by a contractor or a client saying, hey, where did we come down on this issue? And how did we resolve, this problem? And it's a tool where you can easily sort in Excel by name, project number, and date, and easily pull up an individual, their project, their specific project, and a chronological review of what was discussed briefly. The two examples I gave were serious issues that we had to verify what we said. As many of you know, sometimes contractors and clients hear what they want to hear and ignore the rest. And occasionally it can be problematic when they try to overcharge you or not pay their bills. So it's just a simple tool where, again, a caveat, I don't use this for every phone call. That would be too much. But on anything important, anything project related, schedule related, cost related, task related, I try to at least take some notes in the comments section. But then what's most important is to follow with an email to that individual with bullet points on what we discussed and a disclaimer. Look, please verify for edits, errors, and omissions. Did I say everything correctly? Or did you have a different take on it? Is there anything I said wrong that you just said, no, we did not discuss that, or you forgot, something that was important? 99.9% of the time, you'll never hear back. Again, they just hear what they want to hear and go forward. But then you have a record that is legally binding, both with the Excel spreadsheet and the email. That cannot be questioned. If they didn't respond and say, nope, that wasn't what we were talking about, or I think you want to enhance those bullets in a certain way, you are protected. And both the examples I gave, one was a large change order we did not have to pay, and another one was a problematic client that went rogue, if you will, did whatever he wanted and tried to put us on the hook for it.
So do you file that with the project file, or is that a streaming thing that you do personally?
It's a personal tool. I keep it on my desktop, and so it's handy.
So it's not necessarily archived with the project.
No, it's something I keep. It's a personal tool.
So I do it with a notebook. When I became an architect in 1987, I started notebook. So I have a daily log and any kind of detailed notes on that. So if I ever because, you know, your architect, I mean, unfortunately, we're liable forever. I mean, I don't think they have a statute of limitations on architects just yet. And so I have notebooks all over my house and here dating from 1987 from all the work and phone calls that I have done somewhat for that very reason. So that's wonderful.
So that's the intent of the tool. It's not complicated and it can be very effective.
Yep.
But primarily I use it just as a reminder, you know, to if I'm going to a meeting and want to review where we were 2 months ago, you know, that's really the power of it is, and if you know a call is coming, you can look at what really the discussion points should be and get organized and not have to struggle with, you know, what did we do or what did you say at the last encounter? So.
Good. So Jamie, I'm gonna call on Jamie about your trees, treescaping here. So that sounded, I've had a similar problem with that I thought everybody knew where the trees were going or weren't, or where I was gonna take them out, and they didn't necessarily agree. Do you want to summarize that lesson learned?
Sure. So the concept plans were kind of posted online, but they only showed the idea of putting trees in the streetscape. They weren't exact locations, and there was never really any kind of specific outreach to the business and property owners in the corridor. And so when the surveyor went out to mark them, because we were in the construction phase, they were ready to go plant the trees, and everyone saw where the tree pits were. You know, when the engineers and construction manager were walking the site to verify the location, all these angry business owners came out because some of the trees were going directly in front of their signage, or, you know, it wasn't aligned with their windows or doors. And literally we worked with each and every business owner to just move these tree pits, you know, a couple of feet in either direction to make sure that their concerns were addressed. But it caused us, we were already at construction phase. And so the designers had to go back, change all of the documents. So the client incurred additional costs and lost time, and technically missed the planting window for the trees that year. So it delayed the project. So there were significant cost and project delays as a result of not checking with stakeholders.
Right. So it wasn't LaBella's responsibility to check with the stakeholders, right?
It was not, to be clear, this was previous employment. It was not LaBella.
Well, but even so, the AE, it wasn't the AE. I mean, the lesson learned here is really the PM could have stepped back and thought about this a little bit and then said to the owner, hey, you know, you got something else like that, Mr. Owner, have you coordinated? I mean, is that really the lesson? Is it we could have maybe assisted with the long-term solution with this, you know? So
yeah,
right.
I think it would have been encouraging the owner, the client, to do the outreach.
Yeah. Yep. So that's good. You know, Aaron, I like if Aaron wants to jump in here and with your examples here is assume
Sure.
nothing.
This is Mr. Cannon. That was my teacher. I had a high school teacher, and we were very close. He was like a mentor to me, but he gave me such a hard time because I would always have to like double and triple check things with him. But I don't pick up on inferences. Perhaps that's like, you know, I wish I could, but it's actually served me here. While working with, you know, groups of people where we have people with different, you know, in this kind of arena, you have people with like different side brain dominance, you have different personality types, you have different communication types. And I always err on the side of like, really make sure, like, I'd rather look stupid than waste everybody's time and money. And so that came to light, not just, I'd say maybe a few weeks ago. Like, oh no, they get it. I'm like, I don't think they get it. It's kind of just like super easy because we're always having these meetings anyway. It's like just quadruple check, and lo and behold, we were doing double work. So
Yep.
I'd rather,
my motto has kind of been is, you know, I'm gonna trust you, but I'm gonna trust you through your actions. You know, I just don't automatically trust. I mean, people want you to just trust them automatically. Oh, I'm a senior engineer, you can trust me. No. Show me Show me that I can trust you.
Yeah.
Don't tell me I can trust you. Show me.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm sure he'd still make fun of me today, but anyway, that's neither here nor there.
Which other one that I like here with Margaret? I think Margaret. Communicating 100%, and you're probably not. Margaret on?
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah.
No, it's just I don't think people communicate enough. I had a project, not employed here, but where it was a school and there was a superintendent, a principal, and head of maintenance, and we had all gone through what was going to be done, and there were requests for information for some work, and then it was decided through various reasons that work was not going to be part of this scope. And partway through the construction, the superintendent retired, and immediately the principal and head of maintenance were fired. And so everybody that had been in that meeting that had made those decisions was gone. And we all of a sudden had these questions coming back up.
And no documentation, no good documentation.
I think the people on site had some, we had some documentation, the people on site had some, but it was very hit or miss.
Get it done. I would say in today's day, your one comment here is digital is not legal. I would say that's not true nowadays. However it's formalized or whatever it is. I think people are going after email records, text messages, and everything nowadays. So I think that I certainly
well, I just
like
mean, what I mean is that a hard copy, if you've got a hard copy of the email or drawings or whatever, that trumps a digital copy. That was my understanding.
Yeah, so that'd be a good question for Bob Attardo, because I think that if you have in the file through Newforma or something a digital copy of an email, I think we're pretty secure. But it doesn't hurt. But it's just yeah, you just got to have good documentation, good 110% communication. That's what it's all about for the project manager, to keep them in the middle. So.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody is talking, the common theme that's coming through, I think, is, documentation is key. And going back to Mark, the example that you had where there were more site visits than anticipated or whatnot. I don't know if I can't remember if I shared or not, but I had a project that I had taken over for somebody else. And the proposal was very loosely worded, did not have in there any information about number of site visits. It did not have in there any information about the number of meetings, the number of change orders or mods or anything like that. And it was a very intense client, and they kept on coming back with more changes. And so unfortunately, we were legally on the hook. Like, there was nothing in there. There were no assumptions in our proposal. So a lot of our lessons learned, which we learn the hard way usually, the remedy is to make sure that our proposals and our documents have assumptions and exclusions, and we've got it all documented and taking good notes, meeting minutes, sending emails after meetings, even if it's just a quick couple bullets, save you every time. So it's all good stuff.
And Jonathan Myers, I thought we could end with Jonathan here. I thought that was good. If you want to comment on your lesson learned here.
Sure, it's kind of a weird story. We were working for a municipality, and the different departments in the municipality didn't trust each other very well. So their public works department had an inspector, and the department that I was working for asked me to hire another inspector to watch their inspector. So there were two full-time inspectors on the job inspecting each other, and the the public works inspector kind of exerted his age and experience over the other inspector and convinced him that he didn't really need to do his job. And so he never, and the public works inspector was sitting back in the trailer smoking cigarettes all day long. So nobody was inspecting anything for a whole lot. And this was completely unclear because it never came out in the meetings. Everybody was keeping it on the down low. And so we had some other people that I sent out there, and they discovered this little problem. But there were problems in construction that resulted from them not doing their job. And now I simply don't trust the inspectors anymore. I think it's a shame, but it's not like a blanket statement, but and there's a little verification that has to go into it. Make sure that the person's qualified. That's a big part of it, and make sure they're doing their job and not just writing down notes that sound good. This all happened with a previous firm too. Just want to make that clear too.
I try to preach is that, the PM is kind of womb to tomb, right? I mean, PM even, and we sell this too in our proposals, is just because you went to construction, the PM doesn't go away. And so even though you hired somebody, that PM may need to go out to the site once a month or something else like that. And maybe with their firsthand eyes on it, they could have saw that something was suspicious or something else like that.
Yeah. So. And I thought that my monthly I think we're doing monthly progress meetings or bi-weekly progress meetings or something. And I thought that would be enough, but those inspectors were prepared. They were making it look like they were doing stuff when I was there. So a little, every now and then, just a slide by the site is not a bad idea.
That just happened in that hotel in Las Vegas, the one they're tearing down.
Oh.
They didn't have proper inspection.
No, they weren't. It wasn't being properly inspected. So it's being torn down now.
All right, we'll go to my closing slide here before we give it back to Sue. Slide. Is ever doing the slides? Heather. So, I mean, it's just, what we've been saying, it's communication. I mean, and with PMs and, in person, in writing, in emails, in phone calls, it's doing that. I've also found under lessons learned is if you're not already hearing them from the owner and people to do that, is I've learned a lot through postmortems. And whether you do that, 1 year after it's complete, or 6 months, or whatever, to do that, it's a good chance to really see this is what our expectation was how this was designed and supposed to operate, and did it do that? Did we really achieve what we wanted to do? On smaller projects, I list this in here with wetland delineations, because we have project managers from all different walks of life here, is that it may not be just the latest SWIP or the latest wetland delineation, because how do they look in a hole? What have we learned? What have we learned from from the agencies we're dealing with, from the owners we're working with, and to do that? How can we write better reports? How can we put clauses in our contracts? How can we put a better documentation into our bidding documents, to protect ourselves, and, say it once and say it well, and where can we do those? And, ultimately are we learning from our mistakes? Are we eliminating the mistakes, and are we decreasing our errors and omissions? Ultimately that's the whole point here from lessons learned. So go to the next slide. I think this is back to Sue.
Right. Well, thanks, Mark. Before I go on, I did promise Diane that she could have the floor for a minute. Diane?
Mute button. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. The only thing that I was just mentioning, as a biller, and I think all the billers would be on my side too, is I know we're all busy. I know my PMs are super busy, and a lot of times they tend to put off billing because they've got a deadline or whatever, and I completely respect that. I just ask my PMs very nicely, respect our time too, because we also have deadlines. And we love working with our PMs, and we're just hoping that with these meetings and that in the future, working together, we can really make this work and just make things much smoother every time our batch billing comes out, and just making sure we get things done on time for both the PM and for the biller.
Yeah, I think that's a great point is, you know, billers, clients, stakeholders, you know, everybody has their job to do too. So we need to be working together so that we all, you know, respect, you know, I need to submit this to my funding source. Otherwise, I'm not going to get the money that we needed for this project. Or if we don't get this billed, we're not going to get the revenue that we just spent.
Right.
So thank you for that, Diane.
Thank you.
So part of when we talk about continuous improvement, looking at lessons learned, looking at postmortem, in ISO, they use the word non-conformances. So that the definition is if we're deviating from a specification, a standard, or an expectation, and they categorize them in levels of severity. When you look at common reasons for non-conformances, you know, we've already talked about the most common ones. Obviously, communication, documentation, motivation of personnel, you know, to John's example, all can contribute to having things not go as planned. And LaBella, although we haven't done this in earnest yet, but we are using the lessons learned that you submitted. And by the way, feel free to keep submitting. Just because I gave you a deadline of yesterday doesn't mean we're not going to accept anything further. We do have a lessons learned page on our new scope that we intend to keep building out. And tracking those non-conformances, you know, either that are caused by our actions or by other project team members, so that it gives future project managers more information of things to be aware of, give them a heads up of like, these are the things that happen and these are the reasons why. So we are continuing work, our quality GPS team is going to be continuing to look at that for the company to hopefully help you know, current project managers and future project managers. There are some clients that do give our teams ratings or scoring. I know the New York State Department of Transportation does that. And if you don't, you know, they put forth these scores to the rest of their compadres. And if you don't meet a certain score or a certain rating, then they likely won't hire you, similar to our safety scores and ratings. So something to pay attention to. So we can go to the next slide, Heather. So I mentioned tracking and recording of those. So I would recommend that for other lessons learned or other non-conformances that you think we should be paying attention to, if you can send those to Kat. And because Kat is leading our quality management systems, we'll make sure to get those included. And eventually, you know, we'll have a corrective action log. So if you're in this situation, here's some ideas of how you can get out of that situation or prevent that situation. There's a lot of knowledge from, you know, what Mark said, 1987 to now, there's a lot of knowledge within the firm that we want to capture before, not that Mark's retiring anytime soon, but before it's gone, right? And that can only improve what we provide to our clients and the satisfaction of being a project manager, having a good project team, and obviously helping our billers out. We can go to the next slide. So all about continuous improvement, right? If we don't share some of these lessons, if we don't share how we might, approach things differently, we just keep regurgitating the same proposals, the same projects, the same deliverables. But we really need to be thinking about how can we improve not only, what we're delivering, but the process of how we're delivering it. Improve the client experience and our project team's experience. Much better to have a team that is motivated and looks to do a good job versus sitting in a trailer in John's example. I'm going to keep going back to that one, and pretending like you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. And why? Because it's going to improve our profitability, and ultimately that will go back to our staff in incentive comp and salary. And to be more efficient, if we can find ways to do things better, I know there's a big conversation about AI. I'm not going to get into that, but there are certainly ways that we can incorporate into our processes to make things more efficient, make things with better quality, and then everybody wins. We can go to the next slide. And I mentioned at the beginning, regardless of the outcome, we can all learn a lesson, whether we think, it's a successful project or it seems like it's a project that just tanked. Everybody put forth some effort, except for in John's example, but everybody put forth some effort and they deserve some recognition, right? So I would encourage project managers to recognize the team, whether that's just having a thank you email or thank you card, or taking them to happy hour or having a lunch, or, it doesn't have to be expensive. It's just recognizing that you appreciate their efforts. When you do it, make sure you're clear on exactly what effort or what deliverable you are recognizing. Even though thanks for your efforts is great, if you can put some kind of specificity to that, even better. So then that person will do that specific thing the same way next time because they know it was a good thing to do or a right thing to do. So I wondered, just kind of randomly want to throw it out there if anybody wants to share. Have you, done this with any of your project teams, or have you been, part of a team where a project manager did this? Anybody want to
I'll
share?
just jump in quick. Is that so? I find that I can't wait till the ultimate end of the project to do something, because my projects generally are long, and so you kind of loses its luster if you wait till after construction. So many times I've done a little thing, got a sheet pizza in or something else like that at the end of when you go to bid, right? You cross that finish line. Everybody's been putting in a lot of time on finalizing the documents. And so then those applicable team members, I'll do something then. And then at the end of construction, if it was successful and and we made money and good clients, then you might do another one at the end of construction. But it's thinking of appropriate milestones as PM to do something. So with that, somebody else can share if they want.
For Nazareth, Gabe took us out for like a happy hour when that was completed, because we went through a lot just to get the building approved with the town of Pittsford. And actually it wasn't even the town of Pittsford that we had the issue with. It was with the Irondequoit Country Club, because they were afraid that they were going to see and hear the building next to at Nazareth. So they actually held up the project pretty significantly amount of time because of that. And the town didn't really want to step in because of previous projects that they were in trouble with because they went forward with it without discussing it or getting approval from neighbors. So yeah, and then the whole construction project and construction. So after he took the whole team out for a little appreciation for that. That's nice.
Any
Anyone
other
else?
examples?
And if you haven't done it, we gotta start doing it more, right?
Right. So, you know, again, as a company, we want to encourage, you know, we're not going to obviously spend a fortune. It doesn't have to come out of your project budget. It can come out of a divisional budget or an overhead budget. Just, it is important though, I think, to recognize that team, especially if you want them to work with you on another project. So that then, you know, that communication can happen continuously. And Heather, we can go to the next slide with that. That ends our presentation today. Thank you all for submitting your lessons learned and for sharing today. And obviously, if you have thoughts of other things we can do for project management training, improving this series or other, I know we have started some lunch and learns and some other means to get project managers together. So Kat, I don't know if you had any final words.
No, this was a really good group. I really appreciate everybody's feedback and the discussion that we had. And if anybody is interested, on Friday, we are doing, I call them PM roundtables, and the topic is basically taking a look at your finances. We're nearing the end of the fiscal year for LaBella. October 31st is the end of LaBella's fiscal year. So this is a really good time to take a look at your project finances, get any change orders out. And the lunch and learns are, you know, people can come and share stories. I'll be sharing a couple of documents, but it's really just an opportunity for people to share information and learn from each other. So I'd like to see anybody who wants to come, feel free to do so. There's you can just sign up on LaBella U.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Have a great rest of your day.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.